Isabella Perez stepped onto the plane, her legs heavy and her eyes burning from lack of sleep. For 3 weeks straight, she'd been chasing a human trafficking ring across Southern California, barely stopping to eat or rest. Now, the case was finally closed, 38 women and girls rescued, a monster named Alejandro Vargas locked up, and all she wanted was 6 hours of peace. She'd splurged on a first-class ticket for the red-eye flight from San Diego to Miami, a rare treat after endless nights in cheap motels and stakeout vans. Her hoodie was worn, her jeans faded, and her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. But she didn't care how she looked. She just wanted to crash. The plane was quiet as she found her seat, 15A, next to the window. She dropped her small backpack under the seat, slid in, and let out a long breath. The hum of the engines felt like a lullaby already. She closed her eyes, picturing the warm Miami sun she'd see in the morning. A little reward after all the darkness she'd waded through. But before she could drift off, a sharp voice cut through her calm. "Excuse me, I think you're in my seat." Isabella opened her eyes and looked up. A man stood over her, middle-aged, white, and dressed in a fancy suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His name, she'd learn later, was Ricardo Blanco, a big-shot businessman with a face that said he wasn't used to hearing no. His mouth was a thin line, and his blue eyes narrowed as he stared down at her, taking in her hoodie and sneakers like she'd wandered into the wrong part of town. She pulled her boarding pass from her pocket, glanced at it, and then met his gaze. 15A. "This is my seat," she said, keeping her voice steady even though exhaustion tugged at her. She'd dealt with worse than this guy in the last few weeks. Interrogations, shootouts, crime victims. A grumpy passenger wasn't going to rattle her. Ricardo's eyes flicked over her again, slower this time, like he was sizing her up and didn't like what he saw. "There must be a mistake," he said, his tone sharp. "I always book first class on this route. Always the window." Isabella almost laughed. She'd heard that line before. People who thought money and status meant the world bent for them. She'd spent 15 years with the FBI proving it didn't. But she was too tired to argue. She just held up her boarding pass, letting the facts speak for her. Ricardo's face turned red, a flush creeping up from his neck to his neatly combed hair. He snapped his fingers, actually snapped them, like he was calling a dog. A flight attendant hurried over, a young woman with a name tag that read Ana Morales. She'd only been with the airline 6 months, but her smile was practiced, the kind you learn to wear when people treat you like furniture. "Yes, sir. How can I help?" Ana asked, her voice bright despite the late hour. "There's a seating error," Ricardo said, not even looking at her. He kept his eyes on Maria. Like she was the problem, he could glare away. "This woman is in my seat." Ana's smile didn't waver. "May I see both of your boarding passes, please?" Isabella handed hers over without a word, resting her head back against the seat. Ricardo made a big show of patting his pockets, like he couldn't find his pass, then finally pulled it out with a huff. Ana checked them both, her fingers quick on her tablet. "Sir," she said, pointing to Ricardo's pass, "you're in 15B, the aisle seat. The window seat, 15A, belongs to this passenger." She nodded at Maria. Ricardo's flush deepened, turning his face the color of a ripe tomato. "That's impossible," he snapped. "I specifically requested a window seat. I always get a window seat." "Understand, sir," Ana said, still calm. "I can check if there's another window seat available, but this flight's pretty full tonight." Isabella sighed quietly, rubbing her temple. She'd hoped to sleep through the flight, not sit next to someone who already acted like she didn't belong. She watched Ana tap her tablet, her short nails clicking softly, and waited for the inevitable. "No other first-class seats are open," Ana said after a moment. "There's a window seat in premium economy, if you'd like to move there." "Absolutely not," Ricardo said, his voice loud enough that a few passengers turned to look. "I paid for first class, and that's what I expect." "Then 15B is your seat, sir," Ana replied, her tone firm but polite. "Would you like help with your carry-on?" Ricardo grumbled under his breath, something about standards and what's this airline coming to, but he finally shoved his fancy leather bag into the overhead bin. He dropped into 15B with a thud, pulling out a sanitizing wipe and scrubbing the armrest between them like Isabella might have contaminated it. She almost rolled her eyes, but decided it wasn't worth the energy. Instead, she pulled out her book, a biography of Dolores Huerta, a Latina who'd fought for workers' rights decades ago. Isabella had been meaning to finish it for months, but the trafficking case had eaten up her life. Now, with Vargas behind bars, she could finally turn a page without her phone buzzing about a new lead. She opened her bookmark and tried to focus, the words blurring a little as her eyelids grew heavy. Ricardo shifted in his seat, adjusting his tie like it was choking him. He glanced at her book, then at her, his lips twitching like he wanted to say something. Isabella braced herself. She met plenty of guys like him, men who thought they owned every room they walked into. She could feel the judgment coming, and she wasn't wrong. "That's quite a serious book for a flight," he said after a minute, his voice dripping with something she couldn't quite name. Surprise, maybe, or condescension. Isabella looked up, meeting his eyes. "I like stories about strong women who don't let people push them around," she said evenly. "Keeps me inspired." Ricardo blinked, caught off guard, then forced a small laugh. "Well, we all have our tastes, I suppose." The plane started rolling toward the runway, and Anna began the safety demo up front, her voice cheerful over the intercom. Isabella noticed Ricardo's eyes linger on Anna a little too long, tracking her as she moved down the aisle. It wasn't just curiosity. There was something sharp in his gaze, something that made Maria's gut tighten. She'd spent years honing that instinct, and it rarely lied. This guy wasn't just a jerk. He was trouble. She didn't know it yet, but that moment, his voice, his stare, that first clash over his seat, was the spark that would ignite a night she'd never forget. Before the plane landed in Miami, secrets would spill out, lives would tangle, and blood would hit the floor. All because Isabella Perez picked 15A and Ricardo Blanco couldn't stand it. The plane hummed as it climbed into the night sky, leaving San Diego behind. Isabella Perez leaned back in 15A, her book open on her lap, but her eyes kept drifting shut. The words about Dolores Huerta blurred together, and she let them. She deserved this quiet, she told herself. Just a few hours to recharge before Miami. Next to her, Ricardo Blanco fidgeted, his polished shoes tapping the floor. He'd stopped wiping down the armrest, but the air between them still felt thick, like he was holding onto his annoyance. After a few minutes of silence, he cleared his throat. "That's quite a heavy choice for a plane ride," he said, nodding at her book. His voice had that same edge from before, like he couldn't believe someone like her would read something serious. Isabella glanced at him, keeping her face neutral. "I like it," she said. "It's about a woman who fought for what's right, even when people tried to stop her. Keeps me going." Ricardo shifted, his fancy suit rustling. "Well, if you're into that sort of thing, I'd pick something lighter myself, maybe a romance novel." He smirked, like he made a clever joke. She didn't smile back. She'd met too many men like him, guys who thought they could talk down to her because of how she looked or where they assumed she came from. "I find real stories more interesting," she said, her tone cool, "especially about women who don't let others decide their worth." He opened his mouth, then closed it, looking away. For a second, she thought she saw a flicker of something. Embarrassment, maybe, but it vanished fast. He pulled out his phone and started scrolling, pretending she wasn't there. Isabella turned back to her book, but her peace didn't last long. A loud voice cut through the cabin from back. "I'm not sitting next to him. This is ridiculous." Isabella turned in her seat. A few rows behind, in coach, an older woman with gray hair and a sharp face stood up, pointing at the young man next to her. He was maybe 20, with dark hair and a backpack, trying to stuff his bag into the overhead bin. His skin was a warm brown, and he wore a faded UCLA hoodie. The woman's voice carried, loud enough that half the plane could hear. "Do you know what his people have done? I won't stand for it." The young man froze, his face turning red. "I was born in Los Angeles," he said quietly, staring at the floor. "I'm a med student. Second year." Maria's stomach twisted. She knew that tone, the kind of fear that comes when someone judges you for no reason. She'd heard it from victims, from witnesses, even from herself sometimes, back when she was a kid and people assumed things about her because of her last name or her abuela's accent. The flight attendant from earlier, Ana Morales, was already hurrying down the aisle, but another attendant got there first, a guy with a name tag that read Miguel Torres. He held up his hands, trying to calm things down. "Ma'am, please keep your voice down," he said. "What's the problem?" The woman, her conference badge said Elena Castillo, crossed her arms. "I know what I see," she hissed. "His people don't belong here. You should have checked him better." "I'm American," the young man said again, louder this time, though his voice shook. "I just want to get to Miami." Ricardo leaned toward Maria, keeping his voice low. "This is why I hate flying these days," he muttered. "It used to be civilized. Now anyone can get on." Maria's eyes narrowed. "Anyone," she repeated, slow and sharp. He didn't catch the warning in her tone. "You know what I mean," he said, waving a hand. "Standards have dropped. Discount fares and all that." She turned fully to face him, her book forgotten. "No, I don't know what you mean. Explain it." He blinked, caught off guard again, but before he could answer, Ana reached Elena and the young man. "Ma'am," Ana said, her smile tight, "if you're uncomfortable, I can look for another seat. But everyone here's been screened." "He's fine. I don't care about your screening," Elena snapped. "I want him gone." The young man, Javier Ortiz, Isabella would learn, rubbed his face, looking like he wanted to disappear. "I'll switch seats if it helps," he said. "I don't want trouble." Isabella couldn't sit still anymore. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood, her voice cutting through the noise. "I'll switch with him," she called out. Heads turned, including Ricardo's, who looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "You're leaving?" he asked, surprised. She grabbed her backpack and book, meeting his eyes. "Seems like my being here bothers you just as much," she said coolly. "So yeah, I'm going. Enjoy your window seat." Ricardo's mouth opened, then shut. He grabbed her wrist as she stepped past. A quick, bold move that sent a spark of anger through her. "I never said I had a problem with you," he said, sounding confused. Isabella pulled her arm free with a firm twist, her grip strong enough to make his eyes widen. "You didn't have to say it," she replied. "Excuse me." She moved down the aisle, ignoring the stares. Miguel met her halfway, looking relieved. "You sure about this?" he asked. "You were in 15A, right?" "Yeah," Isabella said. "I'll take a spot." "No big deal." Javier looked up as she approached, his dark eyes grateful but embarrassed. "You don't have to do this," he said. "I didn't mean to cause a scene." "It's not you causing it," Isabella told him. "I'm Isabella Perez." "You." "Javier Ortiz," he said, shaking her hand. "Thanks. Really." They swapped places, Javier heading to first class while Isabella slid into his seat next to Elena. The older woman glared at her, muttering something under her breath as the plane leveled off. Isabella settled in, her backpack at her feet, and opened her book again. She could feel Elena's eyes on her, sharp and judging, but she didn't care. She dealt with worse than a grumpy old lady. The cabin lights dimmed, and the engines hummed steady. Isabella thought maybe she'd get some rest now. But deep down, she knew better. Something about Ricardo's words, Elena's anger, Javier's quiet strength, it all felt connected, like threads she couldn't see yet. Trouble was brewing, and she was right in the middle of it. She just didn't know how wild the night would get. The plane droned on through the night, somewhere over Arizona. The cabin lights dimmed to a soft glow. Isabella Perez sat in her new seat in coach, next to Elena Castillo, who'd finally stopped muttering and started dozing off, her arms crossed tight. Maria's book lay open on her lap, but her eyes were heavy. The steady hum of the engines pulled her toward sleep, a rare chance to rest after weeks of chasing shadows. She let her head tip back, breathing slow, and drifted off. She didn't know how long she slept, maybe an hour, maybe two, before urgent whispers snapped her awake. Up ahead, 3 rows in front of her, the flight attendant Miguel Torres crouched over an older man, slumped in his seat. Miguel's face was tight with worry, his hands shaking the man's shoulder. "Sir? Sir, can you hear me?" he said, his voice low but sharp. Maria's training kicked in like a switch flipping on. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood, moving toward them without thinking. 15 years in the FBI had taught her to act first, ask questions later. "Everything okay?" she asked Miguel, keeping her tone quiet so she wouldn't wake the whole plane. Miguel looked up, relief flashing in his eyes. "He was complaining about chest pain earlier," he said. "Now I can't wake him. His breathing's weak." Before Isabella could respond, another voice cut in. "I'm a doctor." It was Javier Ortiz, the med student she'd switched seats with. He'd rushed back from first class, his UCLA hoodie wrinkled from sitting. He squeezed past a sleepy passenger and knelt beside the man, checking his pulse with steady fingers. Isabella stepped closer, peering at the passenger. He was in his 70s, maybe, with thinning gray hair and a pale face that looked almost gray in the dim light. His chest rose and fell, but barely. She glanced at Miguel. "What's his name?" "Carlos Rivera," Miguel said, pulling a passenger list from his pocket. "He's headed to Miami for a wedding, his granddaughter's." Javier pressed 2 fingers to Carlos's neck, then checked his eyes with a small penlight from his backpack. "We need to lay him flat," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Does the plane have a medical kit?" "An AED." "Yeah, I'll grab them," Miguel said, jumping up and heading toward the front. Isabella didn't hesitate. "I'll help move him," she told Javier. Together, they carefully lifted Carlos from his seat, easing him into the aisle. He was heavier than he looked, his limp body awkward to maneuver in the tight space. A few passengers stirred, craning their necks to see what was happening, but most stayed asleep. "Sir, can you hear me?" Javier asked again, unbuttoning Carlos's shirt to check his chest. Carlos's eyes fluttered open for a split second, unfocused, then rolled back. His lips moved, a faint mumble escaping. "Ricardo Blanco." Maria's head snapped up. She shot a look toward first class, where Ricardo sat by the window, his face turned just enough to watch them. His expression was hard to read, tense, maybe, or curious, but sent a chill down her spine. She'd heard that name from Carlos's mouth, weak as it was, and Ricardo's stare wasn't helping her shake the feeling that something was wrong. Javier didn't notice. He was too focused, pressing on Carlos's chest in a steady rhythm. "He's having a heart attack," he told Maria. "Can you get the AD pads ready?" She nodded, shaking off her unease. Miguel was back with the kit, handing her the defibrillator while Javier kept working. Isabella ripped open the AD pack, peeling the sticky pads and passing them to Javier. He placed them on Carlos's chest, one high, one low, and flipped the machine on. A robotic voice buzzed to life, analyzing rhythm. "Stand clear." They leaned back as the AED beeped, then shocked Carlos with a jolt. His body twitched, but his breathing stayed shallow. Javier checked his pulse again, frowning. "Come on, stay with us," he muttered. Isabella scanned the cabin, her eyes landing on Ricardo again. He was still watching, his hands gripping the armrest now. Why did Carlos say his name? Was it just confusion or something more? Her gut told her it wasn't random. Not after Ricardo's attitude earlier, not with that look on his face now. "Does anyone know this guy?" she called out, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Is he traveling with someone?" A woman across the aisle raised her hand, sleepy but alert. "His name's Carlos Rivera. He told me earlier. Said he's going to his granddaughter's wedding in Miami. That's all I know." "Thanks," Isabella said, turning back to Javier. "How's he doing?" "Stable for now," Javier replied, wiping sweat from his forehead. "But he needs a hospital fast." Ana Morales appeared then, weaving through the aisle. "The captain needs any medical people on board to identify themselves," she announced. "We're deciding if we should land early." "I'm a med student," Javier said, standing up. "Second year. This guy's having a heart attack. He needs to get to a hospital now. I'd say divert." Ana nodded, her face serious, and hurried back to the cockpit. Isabella stayed crouched by Carlos, watching his chest rise and fall. She could feel Elena staring from her seat, awake now, her lips pursed like she didn't approve of the fuss. Isabella ignored her. Her mind was on Ricardo, his name on Carlos's lips, his eyes on this mess. It didn't add up yet, but it was enough to keep her awake. The plane tilted slightly, the captain's voice crackling over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we're making an emergency landing in Phoenix due to a medical situation. Please stay seated and follow the crew's instructions. Isabella straightened up, her exhaustion replaced by a familiar buzz, her investigator's instinct kicking into gear. Something was off, and it wasn't just a heart attack. She glanced at Javier, who was packing up the medical kit, then back at Ricardo, who'd turned away now, pretending to stare out the window. Whatever was coming, she'd be ready for it. The plane touched down in Phoenix with a jolt, the cabin lights flickering back to full brightness. Isabella Perez stayed by Carlos Rivera's side as paramedics rushed aboard, their red bags clanking with equipment. Javier Ortiz stepped back, wiping his hands on his jeans, his face tight with focus but relief too. He's stable for now, he told the medics, pointing to the AED still hooked to Carlos's chest. Heart attack. We shocked him once. Good work, one paramedic said, nodding at Javier as they slid Carlos onto a stretcher. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow but steady. Isabella watched them wheel him off, her mind replaying his faint whisper, Ricardo Blanco. She glanced toward first class. Ricardo was gathering his things, his movements quick, like he couldn't wait to get off the plane. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. Folks, we'll be here in Phoenix for about 2 hours to refuel and sort things out. You can get off and stretch your legs, but don't leave the gate area. We'll update you soon. Passengers started grabbing their bags, murmuring about the delay. Isabella stood, her backpack slung over one shoulder, and caught Javier's eye. You did great back there, she said. Save his life. He shrugged, a small smile breaking through. Just training kicking in. Thanks for helping. Anytime, she said, then lowered her voice. Did you hear what he said? About Ricardo. Javier frowned, thinking. Yeah, sounded like he knew him. You think it's connected? Not sure yet, Isabella replied, but I'm going to find out. She moved toward the jetway, blending with the crowd, her eyes on Ricardo. He was ahead, his fancy suit standing out among the tired travelers. He pulled out his phone, dialing fast, and ducked into a quiet corner near a closed snack stand. Isabella stayed back, pretending to fill her water bottle at a fountain close enough to hear him. It's complicated, Ricardo said into the phone, his voice low but tense. Carlos is headed to a hospital. No, he didn't say anything clear, but he saw me. He recognized me. A pause. I know what's at stake. The shipment's still on for tomorrow night in Miami. Everything's set at the warehouse. I've been running this for 5 years. Nothing's gone wrong before. This is just a bump. I'll fix it. Maria's pulse quickened. Shipment? Warehouse. It could be legit. Ricardo had bragged about selling medical equipment earlier, but Carlos's reaction and Ricardo's nerve said otherwise. She stepped away as he ended the call, her mind racing. She needed more info. Pulling out her phone, she texted her colleague in the Miami field office, Sofia Reyes. Need urgent background on Ricardo Blanco medical equipment sales. Possible link to case HT 7729. Also check Carlos Rivera, now at Phoenix Hospital. Fast. Her phone buzzed almost instantly. Blanco on our radar. Pharma black market ties. No hard proof. Rivera unknown. Stay back, observe only. Sending agents to hospital. Isabella pocketed the phone, her exhaustion fading. This wasn't just a rude passenger anymore. Ricardo was hiding something big. She headed back toward the gate, spotting Ana Morales near the desk, talking to Miguel Torres. Anna's eyes were red, like she'd been crying, and Miguel patted her shoulder, his face soft with concern. Isabella approached, keeping her voice gentle. You okay? Ana straightened up fast, brushing her cheek. Oh yeah, thanks. Just personal stuff. Sure it's not the emergency? Isabella asked. That was intense. It's normal to feel shaken. It's not that, Ana said, then hesitated. It's one of the passengers. He's been weird all flight. Maria's gut tightened. First class. Ana blinked, surprised. How'd you guess? Ricardo Blanco. Isabella said, not a question. Has he been bothering you? Ana bit her lip, glancing at Miguel, who nodded like he'd been pushing her to speak. Nothing I can't deal with, she said. He's just too friendly. Keeps staring, making comments. It's part of the job, but it's not okay, Isabella finished. You don't have to put up with that. It's tricky, on his side. He's a platinum member, flies this route all the time. Our reviews depend on customer feedback. Reporting him could mess me up. Maria's jaw clenched. She'd heard that excuse too often. Powerful people getting away with garbage because no one wanted the hassle. She made a quick decision. Listen, I don't usually do this mid-case, but you need to know who you're dealing with. She pulled her FBI badge from her hoodie, keeping it low so only Anna and Miguel could see. I'm Special Agent Isabella Perez. If you'll make a statement about Ricardo, I'll make sure it's handled right. Anna's eyes went wide. FBI? Are you after him? Can't say, Isabella replied carefully. But anything you've noticed about him, his behavior, anything odd could help. Miguel leaned in, his voice hushed. Wait, is this tied to the guy who got sick? That wasn't just a heart attack. I'm not saying that, Isabella said, but I want to hear if you've seen Ricardo act strange, or if he's talked to Carlos Rivera. Anna and Miguel swapped a look. Actually, Anna said slowly, before we boarded in San Diego, I saw Ricardo arguing with Carlos in the terminal. Looked heated, but they didn't sit together or even nod at each other on the plane. And after you sorted the seats, Miguel added, Ricardo asked me if Carlos had checked bags and where he was going. Seemed random then, but now. Isabella nodded, pieces clicking into place. That's good to know. If anything else comes up, here's my card. She handed Anna a plain business card with her number. Don't confront him or let him know we talked. They both nodded, and Isabella stepped away as passengers started trickling back to the gate. Her phone buzzed again. Sophia. Phoenix agents en route to hospital. Blanco's company flagged for suspicious shipments. Be careful. Careful wasn't an option anymore. Ricardo wasn't just a jerk. He was a thread in something dark, and Carlos might have been the loose end. She headed back to the plane, her badge tucked away, her mind sharp. Whatever Ricardo was into, she'd pull it apart, one string at a time. The gate area in Phoenix buzzed with restless passengers as the 2-hour delay wound down. Isabella Perez stood near the boarding line, her backpack slung over one shoulder, watching Ricardo Blanco weave through the crowd. He moved fast, his fancy suit wrinkled now, his phone pressed to his ear again. She couldn't hear him this time, but his tight jaw and quick steps screamed worry. Whatever he'd said about a shipment in Miami was eating at him, and Isabella was ready to dig deeper. The medical emergency had scrambled the passenger list, and Isabella saw her chance. She flashed her badge quietly to Ana Morales at the gate, asking to reclaim 15A. Ana nodded, tapping her tablet, and handed Isabella her updated boarding pass. You sure about this? Ana whispered, glancing toward Ricardo. He's been pacing like a caged dog. Exactly why I'm going back, Isabella said, her voice low. Keep an eye on him too, okay? Ana gave a small nod, and Isabella joined the line, blending in as the plane reboarded. She slid into 15A just as Ricardo reached his seat, his designer bag thumping into the overhead bin. He froze when he saw her, his blue eyes narrowing. I thought you switched seats for good, he said, his tone sharp, like she'd tricked him. Change of plans, Isabella replied, settling in with her book. The guy needed a seat near the bathroom after the landing. Medical stuff. Ricardo hesitated, then dropped into 15B, his movements stiff. About earlier, he said after a moment, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I think I came off wrong. I'm not, not racist. Isabella finished for him, her voice calm but pointed. She flipped a page in her book, not looking up. Let me guess, you've got friends who aren't white. Maybe even voted for a Latino once. His face flushed red again, the same tomato shade from before. That's not fair, he snapped. You don't know me. Isabella set her book down, meeting his gaze. I know more than you think, Ricardo. She kept her tone even, but his name hung in the air like a jab. Like how you knew Carlos Rivera but acted like you didn't. Or how you made a nervous call in Phoenix about a shipment to a Miami warehouse tomorrow night. And I know you've been bothering Ana, the flight attendant, with more than just seat complaints. The color drained from his face, leaving him pale under the cabin lights. He opened his mouth, then shut it, his hands gripping the armrests. Who are you? He hissed, leaning closer, his voice barely a whisper. She smiled, small and cool, and picked up her book again. Just a passenger trying to get to Miami. But I'd think hard about your next move. The cops in Phoenix are already talking to Carlos. It was a bluff. She had no clue if Carlos was awake, let alone talking. But Ricardo's reaction sold it. His eyes widened, a flicker of panic breaking through his polished mask. "You're making a mistake," he said, his voice low and shaky. "You don't know who you're messing with, or what you're stepping into." "I could say the same to you," Isabella replied, turning a page like she didn't care. "People who threaten me usually regret it." He stared at her, breathing hard, then turned away, pulling out his phone like it could save him. Isabella kept her eyes on her book, but her mind was racing. His fear confirmed it. He was in deep, and Carlos's heart attack wasn't random. She needed more, and she'd get it. Back in coach, Elena Castillo watched Javier Ortiz settle into his new seat near the bathroom. She'd softened since the emergency, her sharp edges dulled by watching him save Carlos. "That was good work," she said, her voice gruff but sincere. "With that man." Javier glanced at her, surprised. "Thanks," he said. "Anyone would have done it." "Not everyone," Elena muttered, looking away. "I might have judged you too quick earlier." "Sorry." He nodded, polite but guarded. "No worries. Hope you enjoy Miami." Isabella caught snippets of their talk from first class, her ears sharp despite the engine hum. Elena's change of heart was interesting, but her focus stayed on Ricardo. He was twitchy now, scrolling his phone, then shoving it back in his pocket. He stood abruptly, heading to the bathroom, his steps uneven. When he returned, he grabbed a water instead of the scotch he'd been sipping earlier, clearing his head for something big. Her phone buzzed as the plane climbed toward Miami. An encrypted text from Sofia Reyes. "Warehouse ID'd in Miami. Surveillance set. Strike team ready. Confirm status on landing." Isabella typed back fast. "Subject on board. Doesn't know I'm onto him. We'll stall at baggage claim." She pocketed the phone, her pulse steady but quick. Ricardo wasn't just a piece. He was a key, and whatever waited in Miami, she'd be ready to break it open. The plane leveled off, the cabin quiet except for Ricardo's restless shifting. Isabella turned another page, her grandmother's gold ring glinting on her finger. It was her anchor, a reminder of the tough women who'd raised her. She'd need that strength soon. She could feel it. The plane landed in Miami just as the sky turned a faint gray, the early morning light creeping through the jetway windows. Isabella Perez stepped off, her backpack tight on her shoulder, her eyes locked on Ricardo Blanco ahead. He moved fast through the crowd, his fancy suit rumpled now, his head darting side to side like he expected trouble. Isabella kept her distance, letting a few passengers slip between them. Her hand brushed the holster under her hoodie, checking her gun, a habit from 15 years in the field. The weight of it steadied her as she scanned the terminal. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sofia Reyes, "Strike team at north and south exits. Confirm subject visual." Isabella typed back quick, "Visual confirmed. Subject heading to baggage claim. We'll update." She stayed on his tail, the massive concourse already filling with sleepy travelers dragging suitcases. Ahead, Javier Ortiz walked with his backpack, checking his phone. Their eyes met for a second, and Isabella gave a small nod, acknowledgement from the flight. He nodded back, then kept moving. She refocused on Ricardo, who was nearing the escalator to baggage claim. That's when everything went sideways. A coffee cart flipped over near the escalator's base, cups and pastries spilling across the floor. Passengers yelped, scattering like startled birds, blocking Maria's path to Ricardo. She pushed forward, cursing under her breath, just in time to see 3 men in TSA uniforms grab him. They moved smooth and fast, steering him through a staff-only door before she could blink. "Federal agent," Isabella shouted, shoving through the chaos, but the door slammed shut. She yanked the handle, locked. She pulled her badge and gun, spinning to the crowd. "FBI, clear this area." People froze, staring as she barked in her phone. Subject extracted by fake TSA. East Concourse, service door near gate B23. In pursuit, need backup. A security alarm blared overhead, loud and shrill, but it wasn't for her. It was a distraction, drowning her voice in noise. Through the mess, she spotted Elena Castillo moving against the flow of panicked travelers, her gray hair bobbing as she spoke into something small. Maybe a hearing aid, but Maria's gut said comms device. The old lady wasn't just a bigot, she was in on this. "Stop that woman!" Isabella yelled, pointing at Elena, but the alarm swallowed her words. Ricardo was gone, but Elena was still in reach. Isabella changed course, weaving through the crowd, her boots pounding the tile. Elena glanced back, saw her, and picked up speed, her limp from the flight suddenly gone. Isabella closed the gap fast. Elena reached into her purse, and Isabella didn't hesitate. She tackled her hard, pinning her to the ground before she could pull whatever was inside. "FBI, freeze!" she snapped, wrenching Elena's arms behind her back. The older woman hissed, struggling under her weight. "You're making a huge mistake." Elena spat, her voice cold. "You don't know who I work for. Right now, you're working on a federal charge." Isabella shot back. She yanked the purse open. A small pistol with a suppressor stared back at her. Not exactly conference swag. She secured Elena's wrists with a zip tie from her pocket, her mind racing. This wasn't random prejudice. Elena was a player. Airport security finally showed up, weapons drawn, led by a stocky guy with a badge that read, Juan Perez. His dark eyes scanned the scene. Isabella kneeling on Elena, gun in hand, badge out. "FBI!" she called again, flashing her ID. "This woman's under arrest. Federal investigation. Secure this area and get me to your security center, now." Juan nodded, quick and sharp, like he'd seen worse. "Yes, ma'am." Rodriguez, escort Agent Perez, and the suspect to the office. "I'll lock this down." A younger guard stepped forward, and Isabella hauled Elena up, keeping a tight grip as they moved. The security office was a cramped room with flickering lights and a wall of screens. Isabella shoved Elena into a chair, tying her to a metal armrest, while Juan pulled up the camera feeds. "Show me the East Concourse near B23. 5 minutes ago," Isabella said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline pumping through her. The footage rolled, Ricardo being hustled through the door by the fake TSA crew. Their moves were clean, practiced, like a drill they'd run 100 times. Isabella squinted at their uniforms. Close to real, but the badges were off, a detail only an insider would catch. "Freeze that," she said, pointing as one man turned toward the camera. Juan zoomed in, sharpening the grainy face. Maria's blood went cold. "Luis Fernandez," she muttered. She knew him. Ex-Special Forces, now head of security for Navarro Enterprises, a Miami powerhouse. This wasn't just a trafficking ring. It was corporate, deep and dirty. "I need to make a call," she said, stepping away from Elena, who smirked like she'd won something. "You're too late," Elena called after her. "The shipment's moving. Your little game's over." Isabella ignored her, dialing Sophia. "Sir, it's bigger than we thought," she said when Sophia picked up. "Navarro Enterprises is in this. Luis Fernandez just snatched Ricardo Blanco from the terminal. Armed team, fake TSA uniforms." "Stand down, Maria," Sophia said, her voice tight. "This is out of your hands now." "Sir, they took him in broad daylight." Isabella pressed, pacing. "They're cleaning up, killing loose ends. We can't wait." "Navarro's got hooks everywhere," Sophia cut in. "Even in the bureau. We need to play this smart." "Where are you?" "Security office, one suspect in custody," Isabella said, glancing at Elena. "Stay put. I'm sending a team from Miami. Do not move." The line went dead. Isabella stared at her phone, unease curling in her gut. Sophia's tone was too quick, too controlled, like she'd been ready for this call. Was she warning her or stalling her? Isabella shook it off. She had Elena, she had footage, and she wasn't letting this slip away. She turned to Juan. "Keep her secure. I need those service corridor maps now." Outside, the terminal hummed with chaos, but Maria's focus was razor-sharp. Ricardo was gone, Elena was caught, and Navarro Enterprises loomed like a storm cloud. Whatever she'd stumbled into, it was just getting started. The Miami airport security office felt like a cage, small, dim, and buzzing with tension. Isabella Perez stood by the screens, her eyes flicking between the footage of Ricardo Blanco's extraction and Elena Castillo, zip-tied to a chair. Elena's smug grin hadn't faded, even with a silenced pistol sitting on the desk, tagged as evidence. Juan Perez worked fast, pulling up service corridor maps on another monitor, his fingers tapping the keyboard. "These tunnels run under the whole terminal," he said. "Exits to the tarmac, baggage, everywhere." "Good," Isabella replied, her voice steady despite the storm in her head. She just hung up with Sofia Reyes, her boss, who'd told her to stand down. "Navarro's got hooks everywhere, even in the bureau." The words gnawed at her. Sofia had been her rock for years, pushed her through the academy, backed her on tough cases. Could she really be part of this? Elena chuckled, low and sharp. "You're wasting time, Agent Perez. They've already got Ricardo out. You're chasing ghosts." Isabella ignored her, dialing Sofia again. "Sir, I've got Luis Fernandez on camera, Navarro's muscle. This ties to the trafficking case. We need to move now." "Maria, I said stand down." Sofia snapped, her tone hard. "Navarro's too connected. We're not rushing this. You'll get burned. Stay where you are. Team's on the way." The line clicked off, and Maria's gut twisted. Sofia wasn't just cautious. She sounded scared, or worse, compromised. Isabella shoved the phone in her pocket, turning to Juan. "I need to move her," she said, nodding at Elena. "Is there a back exit?" Before Juan could answer, the door burst open. 4 men in dark suits stormed in, flashing FBI badges. The leader, a tall guy with a buzz cut, stepped forward. "Special Agent Perez? I'm Agent Tomas Ruiz, Miami Field Office. We're here to take your suspect." Maria's hand hovered near her gun, her instincts screaming. They were fast, too fast. She eyed their badges, legit looking, but something felt off. "I didn't expect you this quick," she said, slow and careful. "Let me see your ID again." Tomas reached for his badge, his jacket shifting just enough to reveal a shoulder holster. Not a standard Glock, something compact, foreign-made, with a suppressor. FBI didn't carry those. Her pulse spiked. This wasn't a pickup, it was a hit. "Guns down," Isabella yelled, drawing her weapon in one smooth motion. "Everyone down." The room exploded. Juan dove behind a desk as Isabella fired twice, once into Tomas's shoulder, spinning him back, then into another guy's leg, dropping him. The other two opened fire, their silenced shots thudding into the wall where she'd stood a second ago. She rolled behind a filing cabinet, grabbing Elena and yanking her down as a shield. "Tell them to stop," Isabella shouted, pressing her gun to Elena's back. "You're dead, Agent Perez," Elena said, calm despite the chaos. "You just don't know it yet." One fake agent moved for the door, probably to block help. Isabella took the shot, caught him in the side, sending him sprawling. One popped up, his own pistol barking, pinning the fourth guy behind a chair. "Security breach," he yelled into his radio. "Shots fired. Main office." Maria's mind raced. Backup wouldn't get here in time. These guys were cleaning house. She spotted Juan's eyes, wide but steady. "We're dead if we stay," she said. "Way out. Service tunnel." Juan panted, nodding at the filing cabinet. "Behind there, goes to the tarmac." "Cover me," Isabella ordered. Juan laid down a burst of shots, bullets sparking off metal, as she dragged Elena to the cabinet. She shoved it aside with her shoulder, revealing a small maintenance door. "Go," she yelled to Juan. He shook his head, reloading fast. "Go, I'll hold them." "Get out." "We go together," she snapped. "Someone's got to slow them," Juan said, his voice firm. "Get your suspect. Make this count." Isabella hesitated, then nodded. "What's your first name?" "Juan," he said, surprised. "Thanks, Juan Perez," she said, meeting his eyes. "I'll make sure people know." He grinned, quick and fierce, then turned back, unloading his magazine in a roar of defiance. Isabella shoved Elena through the door, following as bullets splintered the frame behind them. The tunnel was dark and narrow, forcing them to hunch. She pushed Elena ahead, gun steady, the sounds of gunfire fading as the door slammed shut. "Who are you working for?" Isabella demanded, her voice echoing off the metal walls. "Not just Navarro. Who's pulling strings?" Elena laughed, cold and bitter. "You're so out of your depth. Why do you think Carlos panicked? He's been trying to run for months. They don't let you go." "Who's they?" Isabella pressed, shoving her forward. Elena didn't answer, just smirked. The tunnel split ahead. Light spilled from a side door. Isabella yanked Elena into a shadowed nook as two workers passed, chatting about a busted conveyor. She clamped a hand over Elena's mouth, waiting till their footsteps faded, then pushed on. "They're watching every exit," Elena said when Isabella let go. "You're trapped." "Then I'll make my own way out," Isabella shot back. Her phone had no signal, cut off alone. She was running blind, but she'd done it before. The tunnel opened into the baggage handling area, a noisy maze of belts and machines. She scanned for cameras, dodging their view, and spotted a control room overlooking the chaos. "In there," she said, shoving Elena toward the glassed-in space. She locked the door behind them, the rumble of luggage drowning out the world. Through the windows, bags zipped by like ants on a mission. Isabella pushed Elena into a chair, aiming her gun. "Sit." Elena obeyed, her smirk fading to something harder. Calculation, maybe fear. "What now, Agent Perez? They've already flagged you rogue. Every cop in this airport's hunting you." "Maybe," Isabella said, "but that cuts both ways. If I'm a fugitive, I've got nothing to lose. Start talking, or test me." Elena's eyes flickered. Maria's bluff was thin. She'd never kill unless forced. But her voice carried the weight of 3 weeks chasing traffickers, 38 broken lives she'd fought to save. Elena didn't know how far she'd go, and that was enough. The control room in the Miami airport baggage area thrummed with the noise of conveyor belts below. Isabella Perez stood over Elena Castillo, her gun steady, the glass walls showing a blur of suitcases zipping by. Elena sat tied to a chair, her gray hair messy from the scuffle, her eyes sharp despite the zip tie cutting into her wrists. Maria's arm ached where a bullet had grazed her in the security office, but she ignored it. She needed answers, and she needed them now. "Talk," Isabella said, her voice low and hard. "Who's behind this? Not just Navarro Enterprises. Who's really running the show?" Elena smirked, leaning back like she wasn't staring down a barrel. "You think you can scare me? You're already done, Agent Perez. Your career's over, and they'll bury you for this." Isabella stepped closer, her boots scuffing the floor. 3 weeks, she said, her tone icy. "I spent 3 weeks tracking traffickers who sold kids like cattle. 38 girls who'll never sleep right again. And now I find out it's bigger than Vargas. Straight into the people who were supposed to stop it. Try me, Elena. See if I'm bluffing." Something shifted in Elena's face. Uncertainty, maybe respect. She sighed, her smirk fading. "Fine, but this won't save you. It'll just prove why they'll kill you." She paused, then spoke. "It's the Miami Syndicate. On paper, it's a fancy civic group, big businesses, rich donors fixing up the city. But it's a front. They run everything, trafficking black market pills, guns. Navarro's just the face. The real power's a crew called the Directorate. 7 people who own judges, contracts, everything." Maria's mind raced, old cases flashing back. Leads that died, files that vanished. "And Ricardo Blanco," she pressed. "Logistics," Elena said. "His medical equipment, gigs, perfect cover. FDA-approved boxes, legit shipping papers. The drugs are a side bonus." "Carlos Rivera?" Isabella asked, her grip tightening on the gun. "Ex-directorate," Elena replied. "Got soft when his granddaughter almost ended up in Vargas's net. Wanted out, but you don't quit the syndicate. That's why he freaked on the plane." The dots connected. Why her trafficking case hit walls. Why Sophia hesitated. "And you," Isabella said. "Where do you fit?" Elena's smile was bitter. "I find the weak ones, people they can turn. Like your boss, Sophia Reyes." Maria's stomach dropped. "You're lying." "Am I?" Elena shot back. "Who sent you after Vargas while the real game kept rolling? Who kept you blind to the Miami connection?" Before Isabella could process the sting, her phone buzzed. Signal back, somehow. A text. Maintenance room, 3C. 5 minutes. Alone. J. Javier? How'd he have her number? She shook it off. Questions later. Stand up, she ordered Elena, cutting the zip tie, but keeping her gun close. We're moving. To where? Elena asked, rubbing her wrists. To meet someone who'll want to hear this, Isabella said, nudging her out. They slipped through the baggage maze, dodging cameras, Maria's boots quiet on the concrete. Maintenance room 3C was a cramped workshop, tools, spare parts, a flickering bulb. Empty when they arrived. Isabella secured Elena to a pipe with another zip tie, her gun ready. Not a sound, she warned. The door creaked open, and Javier Ortiz stepped in, his UCLA hoodie stained with sweat. Behind him limped Carlos Rivera, alive but pale, leaning on a makeshift crutch. Isabella tensed, her weapon up. How'd you find me? She demanded. And how are you two together? Never made it to the hospital, Carlos rasped, his voice weak. Ambulance got jumped in Phoenix. Fake EMTs. If Javier hadn't spotted them, I'd be gone. Javier shrugged, sheepish. I've done hospital shifts, know the Phoenix EMS gear. When I saw the switch, I made a scene. We barely got out. And my number? Isabella pressed. Javier hesitated. I'm not just a med student. Part-time NSA, domestic surveillance. Pulled your file when this blew up. Isabella lowered her gun, piecing it together. NSA explained his calm under pressure, his tech edge. The flight, Elena hassling you. Real, Javier said. Best covers are. She didn't know me. Carlos glared at Elena, his eyes hard. Still doing their dirty work, huh? They'll find you, Elena replied coolly. Big bounty on your head now. They're busy with my evidence, Carlos said. 6 months of it, everything the syndicate's done. Names, dates, deals. It's set to hit every news outlet and cop shop in 4 hours unless I stop it. Elena's calm cracked. You're bluffing. Am I? Carlos shot back. I picked that flight on purpose. Wanted Ricardo to see me, to panic, to call his bosses. Every word's recorded, bugs I planted in his office months ago. Isabella looked between them, the scope sinking in. If you got that, why not go straight to the FBI? Carlos laughed, bitter. After I found out how deep they're in, Sophia's been on their payroll 3 years, Agent Perez. Sorry. The betrayal hit like a punch, but Isabella shoved it down. Later, she'd deal with it later. We need to move, she said. Secure that evidence before. A loud bang rattled the door. Airport security. Open up, a voice yelled. Isabella motioned Javier and Carlos behind a tool rack, positioning herself by the door, gun up. Security override in progress, the voice added, followed by a beep, an electronic key. She held her breath, finger on the trigger. They were cornered, no other way out. If this was real security, she couldn't shoot. The door inched open, and a bloody face appeared. Juan Perez, his uniform torn, chest heaving. Agent Perez, he gasped. You in here? Relief flooded her, but she kept her gun trained. Juan? What happened? They're right behind me, he wheezed. Fake FBI took over the cameras. Tracking you. Isabella lowered her weapon, pulling him in. The syndicate wasn't done, and neither was she. The maintenance room in Miami International Airport shook as gunfire erupted outside. Isabella Perez crouched by the door, her gun trained on the splintering frame. Juan Perez slumped beside her, blood soaking his uniform. Javier Ortiz and Carlos Rivera hid behind a tool rack, Carlos clutching his crutch, his face pale but determined. Elena Castillo sat tied to a pipe, her smugness gone, replaced by a tense glare. Maria's mind raced. They were cornered, but Juan's warning about the fake FBI tracking them meant staying wasn't an option. How'd you find us? She asked Juan, her voice low over the distant shots. Camera blind spots, he gasped, wincing. Figured you'd use them. Got out through a side vent, barely. Isabella nodded, glancing at the group. Another way out? Maintenance shaft, Juan said, pointing to a parts rack. Behind there, utility tunnels. Automatic fire burst through the door, sending wood flying. Isabella yanked Juan down, returning shots to buy time. Javier, Carlos, go, she barked. Javier pried the shaft panel open, helping Carlos crawl through, his bad leg dragging. Isabella turned to Elena, cutting her zip tie. You're with me. I'll stay, Elena said, ducking as bullets thudded nearby. Take my chances. Not a choice, Isabella snapped, grabbing her arm. Move. Juan, come on, she yelled, but he waved her off, reloading his pistol. I'll hold him, he said, his voice steady despite the pain. Get that evidence out. Make it worth it. Isabella met his eyes, seeing no argument would sway him. She nodded, then shoved Elena into the shaft, diving in as Juan's gunfire roared behind them. The tunnel was tight, pitch black except for Javier's phone light ahead. Isabella pushed Elena forward, the sound of Juan's last stand fading. Shouts, shots, then silence. They crawled fast, the metal cold against her hands. Your evidence, she called to Carlos up front. What's in it? Everything, he rasped. Money trails, calls, blackmail, 6 months of dirt on the Miami syndicate. Sofia Reyes, too. 3 years on their dime. Maria's chest tightened. Sofia, her mentor, a traitor. She forced it down, focusing. We need it safe before your deadline. Nearest exit's by the Marriott, Javier said, checking his phone. We can blend with guests. They'll be watching hotels, Carlos warned. And Elena'll snitch first chance. Then we split, Isabella decided. Javier, take Carlos. Get him somewhere to stop those switches. I'll take Elena another way. She's bait. Javier asked, catching on. Yeah, Isabella said. They'll chase me. You secure the evidence. If I don't make it, Carlos added, it's set to blow wide open. Get it to the right people. They hit a tunnel split. Signs for hotel, Terminal D, parking structure. Good luck, Isabella said as Javier and Carlos veered toward the hotel. She turned to Elena. Parking. Let's go. You're crazy, Elena muttered, but moved her steps stiff. Crazy's why I'm still here, Isabella replied, pushing her on. The tunnel opened to the parking garage, a huge, quiet space lit by buzzing fluorescents. Rows of cars gleamed, air thick with exhaust. Isabella scanned for threats, her gun low, for rounds left. They reached the second level when she spotted them. 2 men by the elevator, 2 near the stairs, suits crisp, hands near holsters. The trap was set. They're here, Elena said, her voice flat. You can still walk, Isabella told her. Tell them I'm outgunned. They might let you go. Elena snorted. They don't care about me. Good, Isabella said, guiding her behind a van. Then you're my edge. A voice cut through the silence. Agent Perez, that's far enough. Isabella turned slow, her gun on Elena. Sofia Reyes stood 20 feet away, flanked by 4 armed men. Her familiar face, once warm, encouraging, now cold as stone. Hello, sir, Isabella said, her tone dry. Nice reunion. You've made a mess, Maria, Sofia said, her voice smooth. This can't be fixed with a report anymore. Wasn't planning to try, Isabella replied. Not after learning about the syndicate and you. Sofia sighed, like a disappointed teacher. Let Elena go. We can end this clean. Clean, Isabella spat. Like selling kids? I'm not surrendering, and you're not walking away. You're outmatched, Sofia said, gesturing to her men. Carlos's evidence? We're tracking him and your med student. It's dead already. Isabella kept her face blank, hiding the chill Sofia's words sent through her. You're awfully sure, she said. Guess that's how you sleep at night. Telling yourself it's just business. It's order, Sofia countered. The syndicate fills a need, always has. You're too naive to see it. Kids in cages aren't order, Isabella shot back. They're crimes you let happen. Sofia shook her head. That was Vargas, not us. We just move the goods, market decides the rest. Maria's grip tightened, calculating 5 against her bad odds. But she'd faced worse. You know, she said, lowering her gun a fraction, maybe you're right. I'm just an idealist. Sofia's shoulders eased, a tiny slip. Isabella seized it, shoved Elena toward her, dropped to a knee, and fired twice. One shot hit a man's shoulder, spinning him. The other shattered a light, plunging half the level into shadow. Bullets flew back, sparking off concrete as Isabella rolled behind a car. Sophia shouted orders, splitting her team to flank. Isabella darted between vehicles, firing once more to keep them down. 3 rounds left. A bullet grazed her arm. Another whizzed by her ear, but she kept moving. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the cops. "Local PD incoming," one of Sophia's men yelled. Multiple units. The hesitation was her window. Isabella sprinted for the stairwell, unloading her last shots as cover. Pain seared her arm, but adrenaline pushed her through the door, down the steps 3 at a time. Pursuit faded as police sirens grew louder. She burst into the morning light, blending with a crowd of travelers, her breath ragged. Her phone buzzed. Evidence safe. Switches off. New meat spot. 3rd option. J. Isabella allowed a grim smile. Javier and Carlos had made it. Now, she just had to survive. Behind her, an explosion rocked the garage, flames licking the level she'd left. Syndicate cleanup, erasing tracks. Sophia's fate, caught or orchestrator, was unclear. Isabella kept moving, the fight far from over. Isabella Perez slipped through the Miami airport crowd, her heart pounding as she ducked into a restroom off the main concourse. Her arm throbbed where a bullet had grazed her in the parking garage, but she pushed the pain aside. She peeled off her hoodie, wincing as it tugged at the wound, and stuffed it into her backpack. Her dark hair fell loose from its ponytail, and she slid on a pair of reading glasses from her pocket, part of her field kit for quick disguises. Nothing flashy, just enough to fade into the background. She stepped out, blending with the morning travelers, her steps quick but calm. The terminal hummed with life. Announcements crackling, suitcases rolling, voices overlapping. But Maria's focus was sharp. Sofia Reyes and her syndicate crew were after her, and that explosion in the garage might have bought her a head start if they thought she was dead. She had to move fast. Her phone buzzed. Turn on CNN now. Javier's text. She spotted a bar near the gate, TVs glowing with news, and slipped inside. The screens showed mayhem. Flames roaring in the parking structure she'd escaped. Black smoke curling into the Miami dawn. Explosion at Miami International Airport. The ticker blared. Multiple casualties reported. Maria's stomach twisted. Elena Castillo, caught in the blast, wouldn't face justice in a courtroom. Neither would Sophia's men. Had Sophia survived, or triggered it from a safe distance? Isabella didn't know yet. The broadcast flipped, and her breath caught. Major human trafficking network exposed. The anchor said, voice crisp over the bar's chatter. Federal officials implicated. Documents scrolled on screen, bank transfers, emails, photos of suits with shady figures. Then Sofia Reyes's face popped up, stern and familiar, labeled a linchpin in the Miami syndicate. Carlos Rivera's evidence had hit, spreading like a storm. The bartender turned up the sound. An anonymous source delivered this to news outlets and law enforcement across the country. The anchor went on. It exposes a vast criminal network in the Southeast, tying federal agents, corporate bigwigs, and state officials to one of the largest corruption scandals in recent memory. Isabella scanned the room. Travelers froze mid-drink, staring. A pair of airport cops watched too, their faces tight, like they'd long smelled the rot. Her phone buzzed again. Exit plan on. Secondary extraction point. J. She eased out of the bar, a heavy mix of victory and loss settling in her chest. Juan Perez had died for this. His blood, and others, paid for this truth. Her career was likely done. Even if she proved herself right, the FBI didn't take kindly to agents exposing their own. But kids would be free, trafficking lines broken. That mattered more. She aimed for the MARTA station, Miami's transit lifeline, to reach a downtown safe house Sophia might not know. The train doors slid open, and she stepped in, her fingers brushing the gold ring on her hand. Her abuela's ring, a quiet promise of strength from women who'd faced worse. The doors shut, and the train rolled off, carrying her toward an uncertain future. Behind her, Javier Ortiz lingered near the gate, a burner phone in his grip. His job was done for now. He'd gotten Carlos Rivera onto a private plane, safe and bound for a hidden spot. The evidence was loose, unstoppable, racing across the web faster than the syndicate could bury it. Elena was ash in the garage explosion. Sophia had made it out. Javier had seen her slip away before the blast. Now a fugitive with every cop in the country on her trail. He typed one final text. Justice rolls on. Till we meet again, Agent Perez. Miles up, Carlos read it on his own phone, a tired smile breaking through. Phase 1 was complete. The syndicate cracked open, its gears grinding to a halt. But other networks waited, other fights loomed. Isabella was in the game now, a key piece whether she knew it or not. On the train, Isabella leaned against a pole, the city blurring past the windows. She didn't smile. Victory weighed too much, tangled with grief. Juan's last stand replayed in her head, in his scared eyes, the 38 girl she'd saved from Vargas. She'd boarded that flight, craving sleep. Now she'd ripped a hole in Miami's dark heart. The syndicate would lick its wounds, Sophia would scheme, but today, Light had won. She closed her eyes for a moment, the train's rhythm steadying her. Her abuela's voice whispered in her memory. You're from strong women, Mija. You'll survive anything. Isabella held on to that. The fight wasn't done. It never would be, but she was ready. The train slowed, and she stepped off, melting into the downtown crowd. The real battle was just beginning. And to you out there, thanks for riding this wild journey with us. Maria's story took us from a tense flight to a city-shaking showdown, and we're so glad you stuck around. Did her grit hit you hard? Javier's twist surprise you? Carlos's courage inspire you? Drop your thoughts below. We love hearing what moved you. If you enjoyed this tale of guts and justice, hit that like button and subscribe. There's more where this came from. Twists, heart, and heroes fighting the good fight. Stick with us for more.